I would like to start by thanking Focus for all the hard work you've done, for bringing us all together at this crucial time. And I would also like to thank the All Parliamentary Party Group for Eritrea and all the friends of Eritrea who stood with us during all these years, who stood with us in rain and shine and through thick and thin. It's one thing to fight for one cause as people, and it's another when you have people really acting as you are, laughing with you and crying with you. It gives you the moral satisfaction, the strength. So thank you so much. I have prepared my paper, but most of it is already done. My brother right here mentioned, this was very important for me, that women should have been more at this conference, as well as youth. And also others have mentioned this. So, next conference that we have, this kind or other, we should have women. Dr. Barakat, Baruch, thank you so much. Because you boil coffee, you prepare coffee for your wife? And at this age, that's great. Okay, so I'll simply read my paper and then do some comment. Across the board, women as a demographic group make up half of the human population, but they are economically, politically, and socially marginalized, especially in poor and conflict-ridden societies. Eritrean women are not any different. Eritrean culture emphasizes the domesticity of women, confining their role to tending to their husband, children, and home. We all agree with that. Although they had to fight an uphill battle for recognition and equality, women fighters who were one-third of the army served alongside their counterparts, proving themselves through heroic action in combat. Besides distinguishing themselves by their bravery in combat, Eritrean women played a critical role in providing logistic support and military intelligence and caring for wounded fighters behind enemy lines. Further, they served vital roles in supporting various fields crucial for the success of the liberation struggle, including mass communication, education, administration, agriculture, medical, and construction. The Eritrean Liberation Movement recognized the fundamental importance and potential role of women to win the liberation struggle. Even so, women were relegated to serving in lower ranks in the military infrastructure. Further, gender equality and women's empowerment was not an integral part of the vision for a progressive, democratic, and developed Eritrean society after independence, as evidenced by the lack of support structures such as financial welfare or professional training to facilitate the transition and reintegration of veteran women in society and ensure their self-sufficiency. As for the rest of women in Eritrean society, they were once again relegated to domestic roles. Gender-based violence was rampant during the Derg regime. Today, women in the national service, Agalgulot, also continue to experience physical or sexual abuse at the hands of those who are supposed to provide leadership. This can have lifelong repercussions for women by undermining their physical and mental health and eroding their dignity and self-worth. Eritrean women have been forced to have unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and other reproductive health issues. Those that flee the country to avoid national service have faced a worse fate in the hands of traffickers and smugglers. As we all know, the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, in its statement of June 8, 2016, concluded that Eritrean officials have committed crimes against humanity, including rape. Women's rights are human rights, and there cannot be women's empowerment where every citizen is disempowered. For women to have gender equality and empowerment, the following points are important. One, establish a democratic government where gender equality and women's empowerment are embedded in the Constitution. We should never forget the bitter experience we had due to our failure to build institutions and ratify and implement relevant legislation. A democratic Eritrea should promote women's right to live free from gender-based violence and abuse. Gender equality benefits men and women alike. Men should invest in empowering women to reach their potential because this will also benefit them. They should not be threatened by women's empowerment because having successful and fulfilled women in their lives will in turn make men more satisfied with their own lives. Second, to support gender equality, men must recognize and acknowledge the privilege and powers they have by virtue of their gender. Men take this privilege for granted because they did nothing to earn it. It's simply a birthright our patriarchal society grants them. Understanding that the status quo favors men is the first step to addressing gender inequality. This is not enough, however. Men need to stand by the women in their lives and help them fight for equal opportunities at work, at home, and everywhere in society. Without this solidarity, it will be more difficult to build a society that is equal. 3. The 28 years of dictatorship created mistrust and discord among citizens using mainly religion and ethnicity, to divide people. So, every Eritrean should take responsibility and work for peace building. The peace building process must start now, and the inclusion of women is mandatory. The inclusion of women is mandatory. 4. Creating a strong organization that stands for women's rights and promotes full participation of women in socio-economic activities must be a national priority. 5. Boys were given priority to go to school. Now we must create an environment where girls are encouraged to go to school and work to remove all barriers to school attendance. 6. We should encourage women in the diaspora who are highly educated and working in different professions to go back to their homeland to serve their people with adequate remuneration, not freely, and concentrate on making it conducive for women to attain higher education and have full participation in government and businesses. As noted above, as said, Eritrean people have suffered so much for so long, but more so, women, due to gender-based violence. Telling their stories openly and writing books about it can be a process for healing and for society to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. Having said this, let me quote Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So, we as citizens are also responsible. We are responsible. 30 years of war for liberation, 28 years of subjugation, and all kinds of destruction, including family fragmentation, poverty, depopulation, and environmental degradation, have left us, all of us, traumatized, but at different levels. I believe these so many years and decades, with what we have gone through, with what we hear, to a more or lesser degree, we are traumatized. We all need healing. We all need healing. Throughout the conference, we are stressing on the crucial issue of what we should do after the fall of the present regime, where the existence of viable political groups, institutions, and civil societies are almost non-existent. We have to draw lessons from countries like Iraq, Egypt, and Libya after the fall of the dictators. And that is where self-transformation that I speak and write many times come. Self-transformation comes by listening to our inner voice. We cannot go wrong if we listen to our inner voice. If we are going to build ourselves and our nation, we have to do self-assessment. We have to do soul-searching on a daily basis. We are individuals before we become families. We are families before we become nations. It's very easy to point our finger at others, but it's much difficult to concentrate, to look at yourself and make a change. It's very easy for me to change. Khadija, you can do this. You can do that. But it's not that easy to go into yourself and make that change, because that arrogance, that me is there. And once you come in terms with yourself, once you think beyond yourself, then it will be very easy to work with anybody. It will be very easy to promote the progress of others, the joy of others before yours, because you are included there. Let's say the dictators, they think that nobody's going to touch them. They're so powerful with all this military and all that. But as we have seen, in the long run, it affects them to the extent of losing their lives. But if you think for the good of others, of all, you are included there. You are included there. So the soul searching, listening to inner voice is very crucial at this moment. I see, correct me if I'm wrong, I see arrogance. I see people wanting to talk, to be the first in everything, instead of listening. I try to learn from my grandbabies if I can. What do they say? The more you know that you don't know. And I'm finding this very true. So what we need right at this moment is each one of us has God-given authority. Each one of us can make a change by starting with the change in ourselves. If I start something and somebody else does the same thing, instead of me saying, I am the one who started this. I should get the credit. If I think for this, for the good, for the common good of all, I would say, well, I started it. I would have liked to continue it. But if somebody has started it, why don't I share my experience with him or with her? And it could be even better. We have to have that motivation, that love, that looking at the bigger picture all the time. Like I said, we are all traumatized. It is not easy. Close to 60 years. We are not where we should be. We are touched in many ways. But if we are going to survive as a nation, if we are going to survive as people in a nation, if we are going to be a beacon of hope, as we were once upon a time, I remember Dr. Barakat, remember me, correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Babu of Tanzania once said during the struggle for liberation, he said, there is a light in Africa. I've seen a light in Africa. Go to the Sudan and you will see it. That's, of course, Eritrea. He did not mean to see this mighty power, the Kalashin. What he saw was, in that circumstances, they were able to construct schools, underground, hospitals, people learning different trades. Although we still have a long way to go, women, to a certain extent, proved at that time that we are equal, and even more if we were given the chance. That was something amazing. How did we do it? Forget the Ethiopians and forget them. But the simple fighters, the ELF also, they did not have the chance. They started the organization. It was, they correct me if my English sometimes, they put it into one, they progressed. And then the EPLF took over. They finished it. And who is EPLF? It's all of us. So let's forget, I'm repeating myself, the Ethiopians and the others, but the love and the let me die before you. This is great. I also remember, this is something that I will never forget. This is what Tesfagiorgis, death of Asmara told me. He was one of 3 people. There were about 7 people coming from Asmara, trying to join the movement. And 3 of the fighters who decided to fight, they said, you go and pursue your education. What is the country going to be without educated people? I said, my goodness, this is great. We will die for a greater cause, but you go and pursue your education because we need educated people to build our country. So let's go back. Let's go back to humanity. Let's go back to the respect of our mothers and of our women. Let me quote this. Am I running off time? Just quote this. I remember when I was going to school, 2 mothers, if one child fails in school, they would say, my child failed. How about your child? Well, he made it. He passed. I'm glad that both of us are not the same. At least I'm glad your son made it. You know, this is great. So let's go back to humanity. Let's go back to the truth. Let's go back to the cohesiveness that we had once upon a time. And I have high hopes that if we change, if we make this transformation on individual basis, we can be the beacon of hope, not only to the Horn of Africa, I dare say, to Africa and even the whole wide world. This is my belief. Thank you.